Terre Haute that, and you've not paid the school corporation and the county government that much money too. Our tax cap losses, we only collect, we lose 40% of what you get taxed for. We get approved to collect it, but we don't collect 40% of what you get taxed for. We don't get it. So that has a huge impact on being able to give salary increases that we talked about earlier. Want to give everybody a salary increase. All that money has to come from somewhere. It's important to stay within our budget and be able to make sure we're doing the proper services that we're required to do. And we're doing that very well.
Mr. Sackbun?
Yeah, these property tax caps have been, for instance, I think it's like 2008, or it's 2009. All right, so if it's been here since 2009, it's 2023. Come on. What is our solution to grow the city of Terre Haute and overcome some of these property tax cap hits? We've got to find ways to say, hey, if we can't increase salary, because maybe we can't, maybe it's not in the budget, what benefits can we offer our city employees? What can we offer their sons and daughters? Indiana State has a tuition problem. Their enrollment's down. Can we communicate with them to get some of these local students into that university? I mean, we've got to find different ways to kind of incentivize city employees coming in. And if it's not always paid, then that's fine. Let's explore some of those benefits.
Mr. Bennett?
So this year, 2023, our biggest tax cap since 2009, $17.5 million we can't collect this year that we were approved to collect by the City Council and the state of Indiana, and we cannot collect $17.5 million. It's the worst year yet, so it continues to build. We've been able to find other ways to reduce and manage our budget in a way to maintain services. That's what it's all been about. I'm not going to grow government. I'm not going to do that. We're just going to be as efficient as we can and make sure every taxpayer dollar is used wisely. Thank you.
Okay. One question that we have is about process and how the American Rescue Plan and the READY funds will be distributed. In particular, this person says they're a part of a nonprofit who feels that their nonprofit is not only eligible but also highly qualified to receive some of these funds. However, the concern is that the process for distributing funds is confusing, or people don't know about it, and so they want to know what you think as mayor is the best approach in how to ensure that all group have access to these funds and know about these funds. And I believe, Mr. Bennett, you're up.
Okay, great question. So as I mentioned earlier, the ARPA rules are significant. I mean, it's thousands and thousands of pages of what we can and can't do with those funds. We have decided to use the United Way to be the facilitator of these funds for us. There will be an application process. They've completed it. They'll be making their presentation to the City Council in October. There'll be an application process. It'll be all in the media. It's a website. I mean, everything you could do. The United Way already has all the contacts with all of our local not-for-profits. Everybody's going to know about this. And you'll be able to apply for the funds, and there'll be a committee that will work through that, and we're going to fund as many different organizations as we can with projects that's going to move the community forward. Not just because you have a project, but because it's a project that will address many of the needs in our community plan and the needs of the community. So I've seen it. It's coming. With the timing is just getting in front of the county council and the city council as we roll these funds out, and very, very soon you'll have all the details. It's been a planning process to make sure we're in compliance with those federal guidelines.
Mr. Sackbun.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest kind of issues that caused this concern was the lack of the communication during the planning process for American Rescue Plan funds. Other communities had a lot more kind of open door meetings, a lot more conversation with the community on where funds should go. So I think that's kind of what's caused some of this frustration and animosity with different nonprofits asking, hey, where is the application process to receive these nonprofit funds? We failed in the planning process to communicate, and now we're getting hit in the implementation execution process, and we haven't even started communicating. So there's definitely some concerns there, focus on that kind of term communication. And then this codified process for how nonprofits can apply for funding is something that should not sit on the shelf. We've got to keep this up, and we got to relook at it and say, hey, where do we need to adjust? Where do we need to change after several groups kind of go through this to kind of grow the opportunities for different grants and micro grants in the future?
Mr. Bennett?
So the funds have to be committed by the end of next year and have to be spent 2 years after that. So within the next 4 years, basically 3.5 years, all the funds have to be expended, following those very, very complicated rules, unfortunately. I wish they would have given us more leeway. I think our plan is very solid. I've talked to all the other mayors. We've talked about this ARPA stuff multiple times. A few communities had public forums. City Council had a public forum here. We've got all kinds of input, And we have an ARPA team within the city. A lot of other communities don't even have that. So to make it look like or sound as though somehow we haven't included public input is not accurate. And now the opportunity will come out where they'll have that chance to apply for these funds, and they'll be awarded those funds very soon to get into the community.
Mr. Sackbun.
No, I mean, I don't think this is a misrepresentation of how the process wants. There's multiple legislators right now within the county council and city council that will bring up their concerns of how the American Rescue Plan money was spent and agreed upon. I mean, these are the folks who represent you guys here in this room saying, hey, I felt like I didn't have enough information and now I have to vote on this. So there clearly has been a breakdown in communication if we have sitting city council members who are saying, I don't have enough information and I feel like we're rushing some of these. And so if we don't include them in and give them more of this information up front, when we get to the time period we're in, where we're on a crunch for time, trying to quickly, like I'm on crunch for time right here, right now,
Mr.
but
Bennett?
really trying
Mr.
to spend,
Sackbun.
we got to do it.
Mr. Bennett?
So, I've talked to all the city council members. That's not the feedback I'm getting. I think we can't let this turn into anything political. We've got to do what's best for the community, and I think our plan is solid. Ready to move forward.
Okay, Mr. Sackbun, do you have a response?
You just go on the next one.
Okay. This is always a favorite question at candidate forums. The decisions made by the city also indirectly affect the county. Are you in favor of single government or unified government between the city and the county? Setting aside the legal requirements to shift that. Do you believe there should be a unified city-county government? And Mr. Sackbun, you're up.
Who is it?
Mr. Sackbun.
Okay, I couldn't remember.
So I do not believe in that because I think similar to the United States, right, folks in California don't see life the same way as folks in Indiana. With the city and county, people choose to live different places for certain kind of reasons, whether they want more land, less land, they want to be closer to an urban area, closer to a grocery store. So no, I'm not for that. Now there's different elements of city government and county government where there could be an open conversation about, hey, how do you become more efficient and kind of work together? That's a separate conversation than the kind of whole, unigov mindset.
Yeah, I don't support Unigov, and it's not working in Indianapolis very well as an example. Since I've been in office, Evansville and Fort Wayne have both tried to go to the legislature to get that done, and it's failed. The legislature has to approve that in order to have Unigov. You cannot do it without them. I just don't see that happening in most of our lifetimes. Government efficiency is really important. So the county has their role. They deliver services to the folks in the county and some folks in the city, and the city provides its services. And the key is to make sure that we're collaborating in a way that we're making sure the dollars go as far as we can to serve the citizens. So I'm not a proponent of that. I'm not pushing that, and I don't ever see that happening.
Follow up, Mr. Sackbun? Okay, Mr. Brennan? Okay. We have a number of young people in the room, some of who will be future educators, and we have a question from one. As a future educator, how do you propose to address the current situation with the aging conditions of the 3 high schools? Of course, the school corporation operates within its own system and elected officials, but in what ways do you think that the city and the office of the mayor can work with the Vigo County School Corporation to create better schools, newer schools, and entice new teachers to Terre Haute? And I think it's Mr. Bennett?
Yeah, I think,
okay.
yeah. So it was a bit disappointing that referendum didn't pass. I understand why it didn't. There's a variety of reasons. I'm not going to fault anybody in any way, shape, or form. But in order to grow your community, you have to have a great school environment. As I mentioned earlier, 25% of our kids are not graduating from high school here. We've got to fix that. One of the things that we need to do is make sure they have a great learning environment. Our schools are old. They're going to have to be updated, and the only way to do that is through a referendum process, which is going to cause people's property taxes to go up because it's above the tax caps. That's what that's all about. The school corporation's losing millions of dollars a year to the caps also, and have been for a while, that goes to capital projects. That's why the referendum is so important. The school corporation, with the new superintendent, there's some new leadership, on the board. They're going to have to figure out a way to educate the public, communicate that, to get them in a position to be willing to have their taxes go up in order to be able to improve these schools. They need a lot of work. It's significant. And I don't think anybody was exaggerating how bad it is for any students that are going to north or south. They're outdated. They just haven't been kept up. So we're going to have to do that from an economic development and a quality of life and that education attainment perspective here in our community.
Mr. Sackman?
I'm in both those high schools pretty frequently throughout the week, and I can guarantee you that he is correct in saying those facilities need help. They need a lot of work. My biggest concern here is, where was this leadership when the referendum was kind of going up to be passed? We need to have a unified corporation, county government, and city government that can all stand up on one stage together, even if it looks like this referendum is going to fail, and say, hey, no, we really need this for a community. That's where I think kind of a lot of votes were kind of shifted when it came to the referendum is, a lot of folks didn't know where their legislators were sitting, where commissioners were sitting, where the mayor was sitting, and different conversations like that. Without a doubt, we need a school corporation that is set up for success if we want to grow the city of Terre Haute. And how can a mayor help that is have an open and honest dialogue frequently with the superintendent and school board members. I go to a ton of school board meetings just to see what they're going through and see what their conversations are. I probably call them, too much and say, hey, what are the updates? What's going on? That's how lockstep that you've got to be, and you've got to be open about that to the public. If the schools want to build in a few different locations, now in the mayor local government role, you're asking yourself, do we have the basics there? Do we have sewage there? Do we have power there? What's the utility situation looking like? Those are the conversations that you've got to have very frequently with the superintendent, school board, and the community to set the conditions for a referendum that's going to pass for the children of Terre Haute.
Mr. Bennett?
So it's unlikely there's going to be any new schools built to replace the high schools. They're going to have to refurbish those schools. That's just, the dollars are just not going to be there. Maybe 50 years from now they'll be able to do something, but not in the short term. Those dollars don't exist to be able to build all new high schools. It's important to make sure that we're all collaborating and all supporting things. It's unfair to somehow blame elected officials for that referendum not passing. I'm not saying you specifically said that, but you implied that. I think what's important is we all have our focus. We all have our duties. We all have our responsibilities. When it comes to asking people to pay more in taxes, the entity that's wanting to raise the taxes has got to do the best job of communicating and making that known. A lot of farmers didn't want to pay more taxes. I get it. That was where the biggest pushback came from.
Mr.
Not
Bennett?
from within people in the city. Oh, sorry. Sorry.
It's okay.
Man, it
Mr.
goes
Sackman?
fast.
Well, I'll just openly state it. 50 years from now, I'll be beyond retired. And that's not when I want new schools for my grandkids by then. So let's just be direct and say what happened this last referendum will not happen again. And we've got to come together as a community before this goes to the ballot box and say this is our codified plan to request funds for the school corporation.
Mr. Bennett?
We've got to solve that problem. It has to be dealt with.
Okay. Any follow-up, Mr. Sackman? Okay. All right. The last substantive question is, what do you think is from the community members, what do you think is Terre Haute's best asset? So, Mr. Sackman.
Ooh, wow, that's a good one. So, I think kind of like personally, recreationally, it is the Parks Department. A handful of our parks are phenomenal. And different parks across the city could use some updating. But I think also the biggest aspect is its universities. Talk about untapped potential. But you've got the opportunity to catch an Indiana State ball game and see Division I college athletics. You got an opportunity to go to Rose-Hulman and get a tutor for your son or daughter. And you've got an opportunity to go to Ivy Tech and continue to grow your education. All of this at any given time. I love the fact that Terre Haute's got so much education in it at all different levels. It really reinforces to me the concept that in Terre Haute, Indiana, it should not matter if you have a GED or a PhD, but there's an opportunity for you to have a livable wage within our city. That's why I like the education community so much.
Mr. Bennett?
We're fortunate on our physical location. Everybody's talked about that forever. From a Crossroads of America perspective, having a tremendous asset in the airport, the 2 hospitals, 4 colleges and universities. But at the end of the day, it's the people. We have so many committed people to this community that want to make it a better place. You know, we still got some naysayers out there. There's no doubt about that. No matter what you say you're going to do, that'll never happen in Terre Haute. I've heard that so many times, and we just have to work through that and deal with those folks. It is so much better than it was 20 years ago. But we still have a lot of work to do to get people to buy into what we're trying to do to make this a better community. It just boils down to the people. We've got people who want to make investments here, but they want to make sure that, you know, they're making good investments. As I mentioned earlier, when you're using your private money, you got to make sure you get a return on that. The collaboration that we have with the county right now, at the state level, all those things are good for us, but you got to do the work at the end of the day. And so I think we have all the pieces have been there for a long time, but continue to work together now to accomplish some great things. So we're fortunate in a variety of ways.
Mr. Sackman, follow up?
You know, I really don't think we are better than where we were 20 years ago. When you look at the numbers and the statistics, when you walk some of these sidewalks, some of these neighborhoods, and see some of these dilapidated houses and these poverty levels that are continuing to increase, we have had some movement in Terre Haute, and there is some success, but we haven't had momentum to really grow as a city. Folks in the middle class, folks in the working class, folks who just need a little bit of assistance aren't better off now than they were 20 years ago. And that's kind of my concern there. And we've got the potential for growth, exactly as he said, but we've got to turn to a new chapter to fully have that growth.
Mr. Bennett.
You know, we just can't paint that broad brush that things are just not improved at all or better. Yeah, there's some people that are still struggling, no question about that. They're struggling in a variety of places. It's not just Terre Haute. We've just got to continue to build this community in a positive way, stay on the positive message, and work as hard as we can to deal with those negatives that we have. It's a challenge every time. You know, every election I go through, it's the same conversation. We make progress every time. Mayors prior to me made progress, but we have a lot of work to do, and I'm excited about all the folks that are involved in this, and my stop is up.
Thank you. It's now time for closing remarks. I believe Mr. Sackbun, we have him up first.
Yes, I want to thank you guys all for being here today with the questions, and if you have any follow-ups, please feel free to send them my way. But as we look at this election, we do have a unique opportunity to address something that the mayor previously mentioned. We have these conversations every 4 years. We mentioned splash pads. Look at some of the election comments 16 years ago, 12 years ago, 8 years ago, and 4 years ago. It's about splash pads. We're still talking about a 4th ambulance, an East Side fire station, workforce development, economic development. We have a brighter future ahead here in Terre Haute. We have an opportunity to together turn Terre Haute around. I'm asking for your vote this fall, and I'm asking for the citizens of Terre Haute to take a step towards the future.
Mr. Bennett?
Thank you. Appreciate y'all being here tonight. This has been tremendous, and just you're very attentive and just wanting to know what's going on. It's important that we all vote. It's unfortunate how many people don't participate in the election process, so hopefully this will encourage you to go get people to come out and vote. We're making major progress in this community and have been for quite some time. You measure that in a variety of ways. We do talk about things every 4 years. There are certain things that we've not been able to do yet just because of situational things when it comes to the budget. What you can be guaranteed from me is that we will manage our budget and we will have a balanced budget. We're not going to go spend money we don't have. We can't make promises that we can't keep. And so our plan is solid, and better times, great times are on the way. We've already experienced a lot of that, but the best is yet to come. I appreciate your vote in November. Once again, thank you for being here. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Well, we have 8:05 on the dot.
Okay, right on it.
First, we want to thank all of you for attending and being here tonight and for your high-quality questions. We want to thank our collaborators and co-sponsors who helped make this happen tonight, and we want to thank our candidates for showing up and being here with us.
We showed up.